What's up, y'all? Here with Crystal Ball.
Hi, guys.
And I got my cool guy sunglasses on. Crystal's daughter, oldest daughter. I walk in yesterday and she goes, I'm wearing these, and she goes, "You look like you're making a hit R&B video in 2002.
Yeah.
And I was like,
Accurate.
yes, I do.
Yeah. Ella is 14, and she kind of is very on the nose with her observations.
She sees through everybody.
Yes,
It's
she
just
does.
incredible.
She really does.
It's amazing. Like, you can't get anything by her at all. So, like, whenever I fuck up my fade, she's like, "You fucked your shit up." So she's right there with, like, the YouTube comment section.
Yeah, she's also brutally honest.
Yeah.
For sure. She doesn't hold back, which
Yeah, but
I appreciate. Yeah.
I enjoy her. She's wonderful. Anyway, so news came out yesterday. Crystal, did you actually read the story or see the headline?
I did. I read the story and
Okay.
saw the headline.
So why don't you tell everybody?
It'd be
how
weird
we
if I read the
headline.
story and did not see the headline. Okay, so Faz Shakir, who's a top, I don't even know exactly what his current title is, but he's a top Bernie aide. He was Bernie's campaign manager in 2020. He sent a memo that went to all of their candidates that Bernie has endorsed to give them some guidance on how to answer various things, in particular to respond to attacks of people, trying to smear them for getting Bernie's endorsement and being like, "Oh, you're a socialist," or whatever. So it had some guidance. And then at the end, it said also, Bernie has not ruled out running for president if Biden doesn't run. So respond to questions with that in mind is basically what it said. So that, of course, set off a whole thing.
Okay, so after hearing you give me the specifics,
Yeah.
I think the headlines are misleading. Because that's just Faz saying he hasn't ruled it out. Which tells me that, the last time Faz was the campaign manager,
Right.
maybe he asked, you gonna run again? And then Bernie was like, "I don't know, maybe, we'll see." And that they're taking that and going, he hasn't ruled it out.
No, because, the memo's obviously written very intentionally. All of those things are parsed and considered very carefully. And so Bernie publicly has said that he thinks there's that it's very, very unlikely, I think is the wording that he used before. But he had also never completely ruled it out. But the fact that they're sending this out intentionally, I don't think the headline's misleading. Let me also say one other thing that I think plays into this is there's been increasing chatter in recent days about Bernie World pushing Ro Khanna as the next sort of progressive candidate. And so I also wonder, you never know when you see those things in the press if they're coming from what faction of Bernie World they're coming from, or even are they coming from Bernie aides, or are they coming from Ro Khanna and his team themselves and trying to paint themselves as we're the Bernie heir apparent. And so I also wonder if there's not some strategy here of kind of pushing back on the idea that Bernie and his aides are giving Ro Khanna the blessing to be the next progressive standard bearer.
Okay, but the wording was, if Biden doesn't run again, maybe I'll run.
Yes.
But Biden already said he's running again, right?
Yes.
I covered that on my show. Obama says that Biden said, yeah, I'm going to run again.
Yes.
Correct?
Right.
So really, this is all much ado about nothing, isn't it?
Probably.
Yeah.
Because I do think if Biden is at all physically able, I think he will run again. I think the Democratic establishment will line up behind him because they see that as bad a shape as he's in, Kamala Harris is a much worse potential candidate. I think there's a lot of awareness of that in DC at this point. And so yeah, I think if he's able at all, they'll run Biden. I think the establishment will try to get behind him. Even, Weasley Little Pete will realize that he can't really, get around the incumbent Democratic president. So then, if Bernie's taking him, I don't think Bernie would run against Joe. And also, we already know, we've been to this movie before. We know that he isn't willing to give the critique that he needs to of Joe in order to, make a case for why you should switch from the incumbent president to another candidate.
So I don't think Bernie's going to run again, but let's assume for the sake of the conversation that he is going to run again.
Yeah.
That's your take, is that he doesn't really have the chops. He's not going to go after Biden the way he needs to go after Biden. He's not going to win, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I have great affection and respect for Bernie. I think that the labor movement that we're seeing now, obviously the credit goes fully to the workers, but I do think that he helped to raise an awareness. Some of the Starbucks organizers came directly out of, they sort of cut their political teeth in Bernie activism. So he really has shifted and shaped American politics. But I think we also have seen now that he doesn't necessarily have that killer instinct. I mean, he's going to be in his 80s. Like, at a certain point, you do run up against just the realities of life and age and all of those things. But I will.
Counterpoint is Biden's old as fuck and Trump is old as fuck.
Well, that's what I was going to say is, of course, it all depends. Like, if my options are Bernie or Trump or Biden, like, that's a no-brainer. I would take Bernie at 150. I would take Bernie's corpse over either of those people. So that's a no-brainer. But would I prefer to see, a candidate who has the same values and vision, who, potentially might have that killer instinct and really ability to go for the jugular and make the case they need to make? Yeah, that would be the ideal world, but there's no telling whether that's going to be on offer.
So if he runs again, I mean, I have no choice but to support him. That's obvious. I mean, I agree with him more than any other potential candidate. He really cares about this stuff. But it does have to be said that strategically, it was embarrassing what happened last time. Because I was in contact with Faz, and I remember when Bernie took that shellacking for the first time on Super Tuesday, and it was a 5-alarm fire. Everybody was panicking inside Bernie world, rightly. And I laid out in super clear detail, here's the path forward, here's what Bernie needs to argue, here's the strategy that makes sense. Fully, none of the things that I said are the way to go were implemented. Not a single one of them. I mean, one of the things, I knew it was pretty much over when Bernie took that shellacking on Super Tuesday, and he was asked a question by the media the day after it. It was, do you think Joe Biden can beat Donald Trump? And he basically was like, yeah, I think he could beat him. I was like, even if you believe that, you can't fucking say it. The whole point, if the election came down to electability, the argument you have to make is, look, we tried this in 2016. We went with the safe establishment candidate in Hillary Clinton, and she lost to Donald Trump. And so we already ran the experiment. You don't need to run it again. Joe Biden is very similar to Hillary Clinton. He's the safe establishment candidate. I am the only one who can beat Donald Trump. The only way we could beat him is with a political revolution that I'm going to bring about. And instead of doing that, he cucked himself. And so I looked at that and I was like, he doesn't have, like you said, that killer instinct. I agree with him totally on policy, but on strategy, he's obstinate, he's closed-minded, and he doesn't do what it takes to win. And he's proven that over and over. I mean,
you see this with athletes too, where, some people, they rise to the occasion in a game, they know how to get it done, and some people sort of shrink from that. And, I think there's an analogy here as well. I'm reading right now the book from one of Bernie's top staffers, who has a new sort of Inside the 2020 campaign book out. I'm like maybe, 2/3, half through it, something like that. And one of the things he relives and retells is that moment where they all knew that Biden was the real threat. Whether Biden was up or down in the polls or whatever, they knew that he was the one that they had to be most worried about. And so they had prepared at one of the debates an opening statement that was going to go after Joe on the policies. I mean, not nasty, not personal. But
Bernie did do that, by the way.
But going directly after him on the policies. He balked at doing it. Now later on, at a different debate, he took some shot, talked about the Iraq War, talked about Social Security, talked about trade deals and all of that. But there was a real reluctance to make the sharp contrast with Joe that he didn't have with Hillary, because he just genuinely, I think, didn't like Hillary, didn't have that personal relationship. So I think, that was a big issue for him then, and one of the reasons why ultimately, he wasn't able to get it done.
But he definitely did make the distinction on policy, but it wasn't enough, because he framed it as a gentleman's disagreement.
Right. Well, and remember though when Zephyr Teachout wrote that op-ed about
that's
corruption.
different though, because that's about corruption. He refused to call Biden corrupt.
Right.
He refused to go after the corruption.
Right.
So if he had gone after him on corruption and said, look, this is not just a matter of disagreement. This is a matter of who's serving corporate donors and who's not.
Right. Which
then
he
that's
was
a totally different
way
line
more
of attack.
comfortable to do with Hillary Clinton
Correct.
than he was with Biden.
And
I mean,
would you
it
look at
wasn't
that, he got closer against Hillary than he did against Biden.
right. And it wasn't just that, you know, he distanced himself from that op-ed. You know, there were recriminations against the staff who were involved with that. Even though, I mean,
she was right. She was factually right.
Completely right. And the op-ed too, if you go back and read it, I mean, it was handled very, very gently. It was not nasty. It was handled carefully. But yeah, I mean,
but it's my good friend Joe, so I can't have you saying
he was
those
furious
things.
about that.
Yeah,
and
no,
that
that's
was
unacceptable.
One of,
That's
yeah,
unacceptable.
Exactly.
It's not a gentleman's disagreement. Stop framing it as a gentleman's disagreement. If you go after him for being corrupt, and if you make an ironclad case on electability, I mean, Crystal, a fucking pandemic hit the country. You could have used that moment to say, look, the day has come. Everything I've been talking about has now been proven to be correct. We have a pandemic, people are dying, people don't have health care. I'm the only candidate talking about getting everybody health care, and my opponent refuses to give every American health care. You had this golden opportunity in front of you to make the case that this isn't a debate. I'm obviously objectively the better candidate, and he wasn't able to do it. He did make contrasts on policy, and I'll never say he didn't. You go watch those debates, he was very clearly saying, he voted for the Patriot Act, he voted for the Iraq War. But when you frame it as a gentleman's disagreement, you don't bring up the corruption, and you don't hammer away on electability, which was the deciding factor of the election,
right?
Well, then, yeah, of course you're going to lose. And then, of course, afterwards, he cucked himself by, oh, Joe, do you support a $15 minimum wage?
Oh, that was
yes,
so
Bernie.
painful. That was so painful.
I
How
said-
did that go? How's that
I said,
$15 minimum wage working out for everybody?
Yeah, and so, look, I love Bernie. He's right on policy. He sparked a movement. I'm never going to be part of that crowd that wholly dismisses him or acts like he's corrupt, because he's not. But what I am going to do is keep it real with you guys and say that if he runs again, I'm going to support him, of course. But I think his moment passed. I mean, you could argue the thing got fucking stolen from him in 2016 anyway, with the WikiLeaks that came out that were like,
Yeah.
here's what was going on behind the scenes, and they were rigging everything. And so, you know, I mean, I have sympathy on the one hand, but then on the other hand, if you couldn't capitalize in 2020 when you had the golden opportunity, and granted, again, all the cards were stacked against him when they did Bloody Monday, and Amy Klobuchar dropped out, and Mayor Pete dropped out, and they endorsed Biden on the same day, and the media went to go slit Bernie's jugular in that last debate, comparing him to Fidel Castro and bringing up you. Like, he had everything stacked against him, but the fact of the matter is, the team had to be prepared for when everything turned against him.
Yes, that's right. You should have known that that was coming. I mean, we all knew that that was, you know, that they were going to do whatever they could do to stop him. And so, yeah, I mean, I guess, as you said to start with, I think it's probably much ado about nothing because
he's not running. I'll call it right now.
I think Joe is probably going to run again, and in that case, I don't think there's any way Bernie runs against him.
If Joe survives. No, I'm not. That's not a joke. I'm serious.
Yeah,
if
no,
he actually
I know.
lives that long.
Yeah, I know. But, you know.
But Bernie could pass away too. That's like.
Yeah, but
look at what we're talking about.
I guess
here.
what we're both saying is, like, if our options are Bernie, Biden, and Trump, like, there's no question we'd be behind Bernie, even recognizing some of his shortcomings in terms of sort of political killer instinct. But it just is what it is. You know, you take the candidates that you have and that are available. The Bernie Sanders plus killer instinct option may not be on the table.
I will say, though, in polls, he's still, whenever they include him, because sometimes they don't even include him, but he's like the second most popular
That's
Democrat,
right.
like in terms of who they want to run for 2020.
Well,
so Biden will be one, and he's right under Biden.
He's also, not only that, he continues to be, and never let them spin you on this, because they act like he's this like toxic person or whatever. There was polling that came out recently. He's still one of the most popular politicians in the country, if not the most popular politician in the country. And his endorsement carries more weight than any other politician in the country. So just keep that in mind when they try to smear him as, like, you know, some fringe character that everybody hates. No, I mean, in DC, like, among the pundit class who has money to lose if he or anyone in his camp were to take power, yes, he's hated, but people feel obviously very differently.
So in conclusion, I will say I don't think he's going to run again. I think it's much ado about nothing. If he does run, I will definitely support him because I agree with him most on the policies. But unless he cleans up his act strategically and learns to change it up and learns to tell the truth a little more about Joe Biden, then it ain't happening. But again, much ado about nothing. I don't think he's gonna run. So it's just, you know, it's just chatter at the end of the day, I think.
Yeah, that's probably right. All right, y'all. See you later.